The time for convening has arrived, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Will the city clerk please make the announcements and call the roll?
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. Individuals who would like to provide a public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meeting. Public comment cards are available online and at the chamber entrance. I'm so sorry. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Here. Councilmember Melody Kelly.
Present.
Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Present.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle.
Here.
Councilmember Tibby DeGiulio. And Councilmember Andy Bauman.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, have you recovered your voice? A little water?
We're good.
That's tough, I know. Have we received any public comment cards?
Yes, we've received 10 this evening. All
Okay.
are in-house. If you'd like, I'll call one and queue up the next.
All right, that'll be perfect. Thank you.
Okay, first we have David Couchman, who will be followed by Jan Stevens.
Mr. Couchman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is David Couchman. I live at 8890 Huntcliffe Trace. We are here tonight to make a request and also to ask a question. First, for the request, we would like to see the new business item concerning the variation to modify the city's fence ordinance for the fleet facility to be removed from the consent agenda and be placed as an item subject to discussion. To say the least, we were surprised to see this proposal got so far into the process before we even knew it existed. I know that the city does not have to do many of the same processes and procedures that a private developer has to do for approval, but we do expect better, and just because you can doesn't mean that's what you should. It was almost by accident that we came across it this past week after seeing the sign was put up just a matter of a few weeks ago. This lack of information is not like the city. Normally, the city has been very solicitous for public input and information to help guide their decisions. However, we do know that this situation offers some unique factors that may not apply elsewhere. And we need to be sensitive to that because we definitely support our public employees, wish them to have the best equipment, and certainly they're well maintained. However, we do feel strongly that this is the wrong location and we need to find another. And if not, then we need to know the factors that went into this decision to feel more comfortable with it as to why other parcels were not selected. You will hear why we feel this way as our conversations continue. We have seen in the past that citizens would respectfully present their thoughts and their ideas to the council, and they would take them into consideration and alter their decisions with the insight that they've learned from the citizen input. After all, this is an area where we live, and we have done that for many years, and it is also the northern gateway for our city. We need to keep that in mind so that people see. Now, for the question that I had mentioned at the beginning, assuming you will remove this item from the consent agenda, the question is then, when and how do we get a better understanding of alternatives that are available to the city? Because this is definitely not one that many people, and this is just after a week or so of notification. So thank you for listening. We look forward to the future dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens? Who's next after?
Jan Stevens, followed by Tim Dwyer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Jan Stevens, and my husband and I have been Huntcliffe homeowners since 2012 when we moved from West Atlanta. I'm here to add my voice to those who are concerned that, first, a facility topped on 3 sides with razor wire less than 1,000 feet from the southern entrance to our neighborhood is problematic for all the obvious reasons. And secondly, that the location itself poses significant issues for North End residents and commuters. I'll share with you that when we moved to Hunt Cliff from West Atlanta, part of what tipped that decision was that we'd grown weary of explaining to everyone who visited us from outside that the area's industrial lots, some with razor wire, were just part of urban charm. So I can tell you firsthand what the presence of razor wire does to a feeling of home and hearth, how it suggests a community as something other than what it is and places an unwelcome burden on property owners to explain that away. But the larger issue in our minds is that this location, again less than 1,000 feet from Hunt Cliff's entrance off Hightower, will add congestion to an already choked area. Not only will City of Sandy Springs branded vehicles become part of a teeth-grinding routine, they will directly intensify it. Ask any Hunt Cliff resident and they'll tell you accidents are commonplace in this 2-block span as motorists try to thread needles between left and right turners as they come and go from area businesses and our own neighborhood. They'll tell you that sitting on Roswell Road, north or south of the Hightower intersection, is a likelihood we bake into our commute time. You all have been part of some exciting changes along the Northern Corridor, and I would respectfully request you consider that the ambitions of the North End redevelopment plan mandate another look at where you place this fleet station. Razor wire almost aside, 8475 Roswell Road is the wrong location for this. Placing it here risks undermining years of effort to enhance this part of Sandy Springs and eroding much goodwill among residents who have helped you champion that cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dwyer.
Tim Dwyer, followed by Carolyn Dwyer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tim Dwyer, and I live at 9965 Hunt Cliff Trace. Tonight I am asking that the conversation about the variance for the proposed fleet maintenance facility move from the consent agenda in order to give more time to review the location of this facility. I'd like to ask for more conversation about the appropriateness of a fleet maintenance facility in the currently proposed location near the intersection of Hightower and Roswell Road. As we understand the proposed concept, the facility is a pre-engineered metal building bordered on 3 sides by razor wire fencing. The driveway of the facility enters and exits directly onto Roswell Road, very close to the Hightower intersection. We feel that entering and exiting this location will be dangerous for our police officers, city workers, and residents of Sandy Springs. As a resident of Hunt Cliff, we know that traffic in this area can be extremely dangerous daily. Adding this facility would significantly increase traffic density and confusion in that area. Aesthetically, we also do not believe that this type of facility enhances the beauty of our area as have the other city projects along the south and central areas of Roswell Road. While we are anxious for our police officers to have convenient access to fleet maintenance, we would ask for more information about why this is the best location for this facility. We respectfully ask that this issue be removed from the consent agenda and moved for further discussion. We feel that this proposed location warrants more time and community input. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Dwyer. And next.
Carolyn Dwyer, who will be followed by Melanie Couchman.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Carolyn Dwyer, and I live at 9965 Hunt Cliff Trace. Tonight, I am also asking that the conversation about the variance for the proposed fleet maintenance facility move from the consent agenda and be moved to public comment in order to give more time for the concerns to be heard about the location of the facility. 2 years ago, my husband Tim and I moved from the Meadowbrook neighborhood at the south end of Sandy Springs to the Hunt Cliff neighborhood. We lived in Meadowbrook during the time of the south end of Sandy Springs Gateway development. As you remember, this was a complicated redevelopment because of traffic issues related to the Windsor Parkway and Meadowbrook Drive's access to Roswell Road. During the time of that development, Meadowbrook and the surrounding neighborhoods and businesses were given extensive access and opportunity to participate in conversations about how the Gateway development might impact our area. And we believe that conversation was well considered by the council and developers. We really worked together on that effort. Recently, we chose to move to the north end of Sandy Springs, and part of our decision to stay in Sandy Springs and move to the north end was our excitement over the plans for revitalization on the north end. We are so grateful for the tremendous amount of work and planning that has gone into work on the north end and continues. As we plan to move forward, we now simply ask that we have the same opportunity to discuss the changes that impact our area in our new neighborhood, Huntcliffe, and the surrounding area that we received in the south end. We are completely in support of our fabulous police officers having the best possible facilities. But we also feel that we have valuable input about the safety concerns of this area that we really need to share and discuss with you. This area is wildly congested and already of great concern to our neighborhood. We do not feel that we have enough information about the traffic studies that might have been considered and alternative locations that were considered to support the locating of the fleet maintenance facility in this location at this time. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Ms. Couchman, and who will follow?
There we go. Who will be followed by Craig Gilchrist.
Okay.
Good evening, Melanie Couchman, 8890 Huntcliffe Trace. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My Huntcliffe neighbors and I are strong supporters of the construction of the police headquarters facility on Morgan Falls Road and want our city's vehicles to be safe and well maintained. However, you're hearing many reasons tonight why this item should be removed from the consent agenda. You're also hearing reasons why this facility needs to find a new location. I want to respectfully request that the fleet maintenance facility be pulled from the police headquarters project and be made its own project so as not to delay the main project, but to allow for more discussion. This fleet maintenance project has gotten off on the wrong foot. Many here are voicing their concern and confusion as to why this is placed on a visible lot on Roswell Road in the area which we have been long promised revitalization. For the city, as the property owner, to be pushing for this industrial use in this location could set a dangerous precedent. It also seems out of step with the vision for beautification of the north end and incongruous with statements many of you have made about a renewal. We're also concerned that we have not received any notice from the city or that public information, any notice from the city, or that a public information and comment opportunity to review plans has not been available. I know, as a municipality, you're not required to go through this process. However, many public meetings and negotiations took place with the residents of the Panhandle before a redesign and location for their new fire station were finalized. We have not been invited to be a part of the process here, and this is disconcerting. We would like the same level of respect and collaboration and consensus building efforts that went into the Panhandle's fire station with the residents who live there. This council has demonstrated many times that it can readjust based on community input. We hope that this is one of those times. It is our belief that we can achieve a collaborative, constructive, and useful resolution if you will allow this project to have community input and be regrouped and reassessed. Thank you.
Mr. Gilchrist, and who will follow Mr. Gilchrist? Madam Clerk? Okay.
Craig Gilchrist, 9661 Huntcliffe Trace, Sandy Springs, on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Huntcliffe Homes Association. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, we're here tonight in a beautiful facility that fulfills the vision put forth by several of you who have long served this city. On Morgan Falls Road, we're going to get a $55 million headquarters facility, a needed and fitting home for the finest public safety agencies in the state. We're connecting the Path 400 trail system. A Veterans Memorial Park is underway. The Abernathy Greenway shows what can be done with limited space, but a no-limits mindset. And we have so many glimmers of hope for improved development on the north end of the city. North River Plaza rezoning is complete, and that project is about to get going. We'll soon have a pedestrian bridge to connect to the Roswell side of the river. The Boulevard streetscape design promises a better look for the far north end of Roswell Road. Construction of a trail segment at Orkin Lake is underway, and the Ava Galambos interchange shows what can be done as an example of thoughtful design. And yet, the north end still struggles to find its sense of place. Restaurants fail at an alarming rate. Every wave of replacement retail seems to be down one tier from what was there before. Residents anxiously watch each vacancy to see what may come next. It's in this context that North End residents are here tonight to express concern with the city's plan to complete the fleet maintenance facility with a modular engineered building surrounded by a chain link fence and topped with concertina wire. The city that can boast the achievements that I've listed can do better than this design. We ask that you separate item 2023-204 from the consent agenda and consider it separately. There's an opportunity to send this back to the architects for a solution that'll be more in keeping with how we want the North End to present itself. Finally, it'd be a very positive move to have a community meeting on this topic to better inform the public of the design elements and the overall importance of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilchrist. Mr. McGee. And following Mr. McGee,
Catherine Schuessler.
Hi, Jim McGee, 8175 Landing South in Sandy Springs. That's in Huntcliffe. And I just want to echo the comments of my neighbors. I won't go over all of the issues regarding traffic, which is obvious. It's quite dangerous in that part of Roswell Road, just getting off Hightower Trail and trying to get anywhere around that place already. So adding anything to that is, I don't think, a good idea. But I mainly was concerned when I just got notice of this a few days ago that the city intended to do this, because I've lived here for 22 years. And been very impressed with the city's outreach to the residents of the city. We've had all the concept meetings. People seem to listen to that, and there was a lot of talk about creating the gateway from the north end into the city and creating a boulevard look. And frankly, it's been difficult up there because we've struggled to see some redevelopment that really looks like what we'd like to see there. And to hear that an industrial usage steel facility with concertina wire is going to be placed on a highly visible part of Roswell Road, frankly, just doesn't fit the scenario that I heard when I went to all those planning sessions where they talked about putting, greenery and changing the traffic patterns and really adding to the beauty of the city, saying welcome to Sandy Springs for people coming from the north to the south. So I would add my request that you table this plan and maybe get some input from the neighbors up there. At least let us hear why this place was chosen. I understand the city's owned that land for a long time, and I applaud them for buying a contaminated piece of property. And I'd like to see it used for something other than a metal fabricated garage with concertina wire. I swear to God, I was shocked. I understand the security reason why you would use concertina wire, but I certainly wouldn't think you would ever place it anywhere where you could see it from one of the main arteries of the city of Sandy Springs. It's just not in keeping with what I see the beauty of what's been created here since we've become a city. So I respectfully request that you listen to the people from Huntcliffe and reopen this for some discussion and debate. At least let us understand why you proceeded this way. It really came as quite a shock to hear that this was happening without any input from us. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Schuessler.
Who will be followed by Ann Walsh.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council, and thank you for your dedication and service to our community. My name is Kate Schuessler, and I live at 9985 Huntcliffe Trace, just off of Hightower Trail. I would like to join my neighbor's request to remove the zoning variance for concertina wire at 8475 Roswell Road from the consent agenda to provide for more time for discussion and contemplation regarding the proposed fleet maintenance facility there. I understand this facility is part of the city's police campus project, and I would like to emphasize that I fully support our police and the project. Our officers' safety in well-maintained vehicles is a priority I think we can all agree upon. I have grave concerns, however, about increased danger to our officers and my family and neighbors arising from adding to the congestion in that small stretch of Roswell Road. Last June, as I turned off Hightower onto Roswell Road with a green light, someone making a left turn broadsided my car with my daughter in the passenger seat. I see near collisions in that area constantly and was not surprised to learn that the city's North End Roadway Safety Analysis Report last fall addressed concerns arising from 75 collisions just north of the proposed facility and another 53 just south between 2016 and 2020. Blamed on the 12 existing commercial driveways in that small stretch of road. Recommendations included adding medians and converting turns to right turn only, and added up to over $12 million in project costs. Have those projects gotten off the ground at all? As reaching the vast majority of the jurisdiction would have the officers making left turns onto the roadway, on a road where left turns are already an acknowledged problem. This facility would only exacerbate the safety issues my family encounters every time we leave home. Our officers and other municipal employees deserve a safer egress. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh.
Who will be followed by Sanchez.
Good evening. My name is Ann Walsh. I live at 8900 Huntcliffe Trace, and I'm here this evening to strongly oppose the variance for the fleet maintenance facility that is on the agenda this evening. I speak on behalf of 10 other neighbors of mine who could not be here in attendance tonight. I do agree with my neighbor, Mr. Couchman, in feeling blindsided by this development. It is baffling. Were no other locations considered for this fleet maintenance facility? There is an empty auto body shop just next to the Taco Bell, just north of where we are right now, that's sitting completely empty. Did you ask for input and feedback from those who would be affected by this? I've learned from my neighbors in the past several days that none was solicited. It's also notable to me as an average citizen who drives up and down Roswell Road countless times a week that there is a Rolls-Royce dealership right down the street from the proposed fleet maintenance facility that doesn't require razor wire, and their vehicles are surely more expensive than the city vehicles. It begs the question that if you need a variance for this material, then by definition it's not meant to be there, and surely there is a reason for that we should be discussing. Our section of Sandy Springs is a retail black hole of abandoned buildings, smoke shops, and tattoo parlors. This last thing we need is a facility with razor wire, which is visually not much different from a jail or a prison in our neighborhood. As my other neighbors have so eloquently expressed this evening, this facility is simply not in keeping with the trajectory that we understand and desire the northern corridor to be going in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Sanchez.
Who will be followed by Rhonda Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Stephan Sanchez. I'm a homeowner at 9380 Huntcliffe Trace. And echoing with my neighbors, probably not as eloquently, but as you can imagine, we're all fairly concerned about the proposal. And so I would definitely reaffirm the idea of tabling the discussion. And while the aesthetic appeal of the concertina wire and traffic patterns are obviously fair points for discussion, I think it's also worth considering the impact on growing that area, as the city's looking to spend tens of millions of dollars on a mixed-use facility within a mile of that. And there's quite a few dilapidated shopping centers, and when competing with surrounding cities like Roswell and Alpharetta and Dunwoody, I imagine there will be some hesitation from business owners and developers to want to invest tens of millions of dollars next to such a facility. So with respect, I would echo my neighbor's request to table it so we can further give input and consideration on its impact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
And that will conclude.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rhonda Smith, 76 Long Island Place, President of the Sandy Springs Council of Neighborhoods, and I'm speaking on behalf of our board tonight. The Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design International Association's mission is to create safer environments and improve the quality of life through the use of SEPTED principles and strategies. They define crime prevention through environmental design, SEPTED, as a multidisciplinary approach to crime prevention that uses urban and architectural design and the management of built and natural environments. SEPTED strategies aim to reduce victimization, deter offender decisions that precede criminal acts, and build a sense of community among inhabitants so they can gain territorial control of areas, reduce crime, and minimize fear of crime. Note the two important things you just heard that are key parts of the focus: improve quality of life and build a sense of community. These two things have always stood at the core of everything this body and our mayors have always done for our citizens. The unfortunate byproduct of the use of concertina wire is that it does not evoke quality of life or sense of community. No one associates the sight of concertina wire with their personal safety. If you see it, you assume the user considers the area around them to be a very serious threat and to be extremely unsafe. The city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of consulting fees. Reports were created, visions were constructed, development code was changed, and this body approved everything necessary to help move the needle on the north end. What started with a task force selection in 2018 has yielded little positive change to date. 5+ years, the north end has taken barely half a step forward. As the state of the free market continues to challenge forward motion on revitalization efforts, we should not take any steps in the north end that don't support quality of life and sense of community. By comparison, the amount of time and money spent in the planning of this fleet maintenance facility is dwarfed by the countless hours of volunteer time spent by dozens of members of the community in efforts surrounding the improvement of the North End. Council of Neighborhoods asks that you don't let the design professionals for a fleet facility stop seeking ways to create the desired secure environment for city assets. Ask them to challenge themselves to do this without the use of concertina wire. If you approve a variance, it doesn't necessarily mean you must ultimately execute the request. Take and make the challenge to do better. The North End and its citizens deserve the effort. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. We'll close the public comment period. Thank you for all of your comments, and thank you for your passion about our community. It does not go unnoted. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the meeting agenda for Tuesday, July 18th, 2023.
Is there a motion, or is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Paul?
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of the consent agenda with the following separation. Item 2023-204, consideration of a variance from section 8.2.10 to allow the use of concertina wire for construction of the fleet maintenance facility.
All right, we have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second? Second. Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda and take item 2023-204 off and put it on the regular agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the consent agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amended consent agenda is approved. The item will go to the foot of the calendar of the new business. Moving to public hearings. Will the clerk please read the first item?
This is agenda item number 2023-206, consideration of a resolution to approve a Metro River Protection Act certificate for River Corridor Review RC 2301SS for property located at 6390 Blackwater Trail. This is presented by Planning and Zoning Manager Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Ms. McIntosh Ross.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So tonight, for your consideration, is the approval of a resolution to authorize a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for the property located at 6390 Blackwater Trail. This is an RD18 property located in the North Harbor neighborhood. And this property is located within the Chattahoochee River Corridor sensitive area, and the applicant is proposing to construct a pool. The River Corridor Act requires the proposed land disturbing activity along the banks of this Chattahoochee River to be reviewed and approved by the Atlanta Regional Commission, the ARC. In coordination with other agencies, there were no comments from these other agencies. The Atlanta Regional Commission has since reviewed and approved this application with the finding that the project is consistent with the Chattahoochee River Corridor Plan. So given that determination that the project is consistent, it is staff's recommendation to the Mayor and City Council to approve the resolution to authorize this Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for the property located at 6390 Blackwater Trail.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment cards?
We do not.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Planning and Zoning Manager. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-206, the adoption of a resolution to approve a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for River Corridor Review RC-23-01SS for property located at 6390 Blackwater Trail.
We have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-206, a resolution approving a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for River Corridor Review for property located at 6390 Blackwater Trail. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-206, approval of the resolution for the Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for River Corridor Review for property located at 6390 Blackwater Trail. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
This is agenda item number 2023-207. That's ABL 102652. Consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Concourse Acquisitions and Development, LLC, doing business as Concourse Athletic Club at 8 Concourse Parkway, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30350. The applicant is Brian Nelson for consumption on the premises of wine, malt, and distilled spirits, presented by CFO Toner Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. This is a change of ownership for consumption on the premises of wine, malt, and distilled spirits for Concourse Acquisitions and Development, LLC, DBA Concourse Athletic Club, 8 Concourse Parkway, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30328. The applicant, Brian Nelson, has met all requirements and staff recommends approval. This is a change of ownership. District 5, Councilman Tibby DeGiulio's district.
All right. Have we received any public comment cards?
We have not.
We'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. DeGiulio.
I move approval of item 2023-207, ABL 102652, approval of an alcoholic beverage license for the Concourse Acquisition and Development, LLC, doing business as Concourse Athletic Club.
Motion by Mr. DeGiulio. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. DeGiulio, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2023-207, the alcoholic beverage license application for Concourse Acquisitions and Development, doing business as Concourse Athletic Club. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-207, approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Concourse Acquisitions, DBA Concourse Athletic Club. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
This is agenda item number 2023-208, ABL 96-226. Consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Yalda AR LLC, doing business as Yalda 6500 Aria Boulevard, Unit 500, Atlanta, Georgia 30328. The applicant is Ashken Family for consumption on the premises of wine, malt, and distilled spirits, presented by CFO Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
This is a new application for consumption on the premises of wine, malt, and distilled spirits. Yalda AR LLC, DBA Yalda, 6500 Aria Boulevard, Unit 500, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30328. The applicant, Ashcan Family, has met all requirements and staff recommends approval. This again is a new application and it is in Councilwoman Melissa Mueller's district.
All right. Have we received any public comment cards?
We have not.
All right. We'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-28, ABL number 96226, for the approval of alcoholic beverage license application for Yalda AR LLC, doing business as Yalda 6500 Aria Boulevard, Unit 500, Atlanta, Georgia 30328.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second? Second. Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-208, an alcoholic beverage license application for Yalda AR LLC, doing business as Yalda at 6500 Area Boulevard, Unit 500, Atlanta. We can't approve alcoholic beverage licenses for Atlanta.
So we actually, we reviewed this as a team. That's what was written on the application, so it's how we printed it on the agenda.
We might want to defer this one. Anybody want to make a motion? Mr. DiGiulio.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we defer the item 2023-208, alcoholic beverage license 96-226, for approval of an alcoholic beverage license for Yalda, because of the reason that Yalda doesn't know which city they're resided in, so I don't see how we can go ahead and we have always made a point in the past of insisting that people who apply to us for permits, et cetera, acknowledge the fact that they're in Sandy Springs. If they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're in Sandy Springs, they shouldn't be doing business in Sandy Springs.
All right, this is a substitute motion to defer. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we defer this item for further consideration. If the posture is, if the substitute motion passes, then the previous motion is rendered moot.
Do we have a deferred to date?
They need to come. We'll need to. Maybe would.
I guess let me. It's a point of inquiry.
All right, make your inquiry.
Yeah. So just from I understand what we're doing here, but from a posture standpoint, will they have to go through the whole license application de novo again from the start, or can they just simply correct it and come back to us? Or will there have to be a whole new review, a whole new fee? I just want to understand the implication. Well, I mean, I know what a deferral does. And a deferral simply sets this for another date. But is there action that clearly is an action they're going to have to take in connection, Mr. City Attorney? Thank you.
The deferral would mean that you would have to take further action that the applicant would not. So, I think to your point, what's going to happen after this to move this along, or if you deny it, then it would go back and it would trigger actions that would have to be taken by the applicant to redo what they've done. But deferring it puts it on the table. Or
well, it's tabling it puts it on the table. Deferring
right.
it.
Let him finish.
Defer it would put it to a date certain, and if the action that you're going to take on the date to which you defer it has a contingency, I would recommend to you state what that contingency is, like.
Correct.
One of us go and school the applicant on where they where the business is going.
Mr. Giulio, I'm going to ask you to change your motion from a deferral, and I used the wrong term and you picked my term, to tabling. All right, Mr. DiGiulio agrees to table. Mr. Paulson, are you fine? All right, the motion before us is, okay, hold on. I just want to make sure everybody understands where we are. That this is a substitute motion to table this item. Ms. Rochelle.
Does this in any way affect their ability to be able to serve alcohol right now, between now and the time that we approve it? Okay, so they can still continue to do business?
Yeah, Mayor, might go back to my my other question, where my question was, will they be able to simply make a clerical, having been woodshedded, correction to their application without additional cost or starting again? Is this just a simple matter?
The applicant will not have to do anything unless you give us some direction as to what you want us to go tell them to do.
All right, we want them to correct.
The tabling is an action by the council for the council to put off taking their action.
Right.
You need to declare if you want us to do something with the applicant. Like I said, if you want.
I think he needs to get the appropriate city on his application. And once that's done, then I would anticipate there would be no problem. I'm no one speaking for the council, but to me, it's just a clerical
Okay,
change.
and will that require a new fee or delay or start? Can they do
No.
that? They can. They can do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I mean, there's nothing that says we automatically have to approve any of these licenses, but I know what council's concern is. This individual's gone through a lot of time and effort to get this point, made a common mistake, but when we're doing things officially on behalf of the city of Sandy Springs, it's important that the documentation show that we have approved it for the city of Sandy Springs and not some other jurisdiction. All right, any other discussion? All right, the motion on the table is to table. All in favor of motion of tabling, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is tabled, and Madam Financial Officer, I'm sure you'll communicate this to the applicant, and we might be able to do it in the next council meeting. All right, moving on to the next item, moving to new business. Will the clerk please read the first item?
Agenda item 2023-209, consideration of a resolution to approve temporary sculpture installation as a component of the Arts in the Open Sculpture Competition. This is presented by Arts Sandy Springs Representative Sherry Morris.
Ms. Morris.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the council. As you know, I am chair of Arts in the Open for Arts Sandy Springs. Arts in the Open is our public art component, and there are many programs within that, one of which is the annual Arts Walk, in which we run a national competition for sculptures, and we select 9 finalists to be on exhibit for 1 year at City Green, and then the next year we bring to you recommendations for purchase to be placed in the parks and public spaces of the city. You have a resolution in front of you, which our esteemed mayor will read better than me, and you don't have to listen to it twice.
Well, okay, you go ahead.
Oh, you want me to read the resolution?
No, you need to go. You've got. No, you don't have to read the resolution. Just present council
Right.
the recommended items.
The recommended items are, the first is called Upcycle. It's by Joni Junkins Herzog. You might remember her from Delilah, which was a favorite the first year and is on display at the Wright Road Sculpture Garden. It is 10 feet by 10 feet by 8 feet. It's a nice large piece. And she says that this artwork was inspired by recycling and the interesting variety of shapes in bicycle wheels. The concept was to repurpose older bicycles into a work of art that celebrates cycling, art, music, community, and recycling. The next piece is called Change of Direction. Where am I supposed to be pointing this? There you go. By Adam Wall.
It is steel and paint. It's 9 feet by 3 by 5 feet at $5,000. This represents the shifting elements in Adam's design process and thematic interests. This sculpture displays a sphere rolling across, knocking over, and tumbling off a set of pillars mounted to a steel base. Adam says he enjoys creating a sense of movement in most of his work. That's a pretty cool piece, the way that ball is balanced on seemingly nothing at that point and looks about to take flight, which it is not. Candy for Sandy, Mark Larkin from Hilton Head. This is powder-coated welded steel. It's 8.5 by 8 by 8. It is a kinetic piece. Candy for Sandy, which we called and said, that's an interesting title. Tell us about it. He is very influenced by his hero, Alexander Calder, who created the concept of a kinetic sculpture or a mobile. Calder's nickname, being Alexander, is Sandy. And to honor him, this gentleman often incorporates the name Sandy into his work. This is a fun piece. We think children will enjoy this. We want to have sophisticated art, but we also like the idea of children falling in love with a piece of art at a young age. This piece is called Flowing Arches. Its material is painted steel. It is 10 by 8 by 2 feet. Matt Moyer tells us that this sculpture explores how different people in communities, represented by the varied colored arches at the top, are connected by bridges, represented by the pylon-type legs, and rivers, the wave-like form. Another piece that's different from what we often get, we don't get very many representational pieces, and we love it when we do. And this is another piece that we think will appeal not only to adults but children. It's concrete. It is just under 6 feet, and it's meant to inspire children to read. It shows a young boy being lifted up by a book. That represents how a book leads readers to new places, or shows them new things, or allows their imaginations to soar. The base is a stack of books, which help launch him on his reading flight. And we'll show you, we're putting that over, several of these we're putting near the pop jet fountain, so children get a real chance to see them. Nesting. This is by Richard Herzog of Athens, Georgia. It is 7 by 7 by 6 feet, and it combines a large piece of driftwood with steel, a steel nest. He says, my work explores botanical forms, the lack of interaction between man and nature, the artificialization of nature, and the patterning that occurs in nature. So you see the different patterning of the shape of the nest and the wonderful piece of driftwood he found somewhere. Another lovely figurative piece is called Luminaria. This is by a gentleman named Stephen Landis in Loveland, Colorado. He's not related to David Landis, the Sandy Springs artist that we have purchased some pieces from over the years. This is just under 7 feet tall by about 3 feet. Mr. Landis says, as a sculptor, clay is the material I prefer to work with. To me, sculpting with clay is drawing into three-dimensional space. It is flexible and supports the movement and fluctuations of my creative process. My process is most often born with the discovery of a form of some sort, which then becomes the spirit for my piece. Here's another piece that is one of the more sophisticated pieces we have ever received in the competition. It is a combination of stainless steel. The picture doesn't represent it particularly well, but the left side is stainless steel and the right side is bronze. It's 6.5 feet. This is by a couple of Asian artists who live in Sewanee, Georgia. And it has symbols on it, and we made sure that we knew what the symbols meant. And they are Korean and Chinese words for heaven, earth, people, clouds, water, mountains, and rivers. They say this sculpture expresses the arrival of the digital data era, which brings a huge change of living methods to human beings. As a result, the future of human beings have infinite possibilities. Data fills our lives. This piece expresses that in the digital age, human beings share a beautiful life. And the last one of the finalists is a piece called Caprice. It's quite a large piece. It's 11 feet by 6 by 3. It plays with balance and form and color. And the gentleman, Charles Pilsky, says,
As the title suggests, Caprice is an entertaining work of whimsy intended to provide temporary rest from the mad rush of modernity. Now, while we've talked to all of these artists and they know that we are recommending them, sometimes something happens and a piece can't be delivered after all. And so we always bring you some alternates to pre-approve. And if a piece falls out, we try to find something that works in the curating of the show, the way we've laid the show out. One piece is The Listeners. This is Carl Billingsley. We have his piece Doppelganger over at Windsor Meadows from, again, the first year. It's oiled steel and cast iron. And he says, I usually...
Ms. Morrison, you didn't advance. Do we have a photograph?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. It sometimes goes a little slow. I'll try to be more careful about looking. I usually create abstract sculptures that don't represent objects, persons, or creatures. More likely, the sculptures are about human activities and ideas that have preoccupied our species for millennia. So this is called The Listeners, and they do look like a group of people, trying to get in on something. The next alternate is called Family. It is stainless steel, and it is by Robert Clements. He says, for most folks, nothing is more important than their families. The subject of this sculpture, family, shows 60 faces of fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. And as we age, we grow. Another alternate is a second piece by Richard Herzog that has the nest piece. And again, he is saying he works in botanicals, and he says this sculpture talks about organization and the chaotic nature within natural and man-made forms. It's called Dalban Satellite Flower, so it's a combination of a space gadget and a flower. And the last alternate is a piece called Magnify by Kirk Cease. It is 8 feet by 3 feet. We have one of his pieces, Icosahedron, out there now. Magnify is a kinetic and interactive sculpture boasting a 3-foot semi-transparent colored lens that catches the sunlight like stained glass. The last slide shows you where these are. We work to curate a nice show, and right outside of City Hall entrance is Luminaria. That's an important place, and lots of people see that. Moving toward Sandy Springs Circle, or I'll make sound, is the Nest. Coming on around to the left is the digital piece, the bronze and stainless steel piece, and then Caprice. One of the things that we do, the bases are different sizes, the trees have grown in different shapes, and we work really hard. I have to thank my compatriots for the long and sweaty meetings we had out on City Green, talking about where these things can best go and how each one is framed by the foliage and really owns its space and who it appeals to. So Caprice is down here near the fountain, as is Flowing Arches and the Reader. Adam Wall's very interesting piece is down near Mount Vernon, where Single Rider is right now, and that's an important place that you see things. And then we really wanted Joni Herzog's piece with the bicycle wheels to be right at the vehicular entrance. And then Candy for Sandy finishes the circle up here near City Hall. So we ask that you approve the resolution that staff has provided you to accept these finalists into this year's exhibit.
Ms. Morris, you may, if you would, please take just a moment to remind council the process of going through, and then each one of those has a price tag on it. We are not paying that price tag.
Right.
That's just what the value is to the artist. We do pay a stipend, but would you carry us through how we get to hold these for a year?
Okay, well, we start with a call for entries that goes out nationally, and it's posted in their specialty, just like people who build bridges and buildings for cities monitor Bonfire for RFQs and RFPs. Artists monitor certain websites, certain portals, and we put it out there, and we also call our folks that we know and write folks that we know and say, please enter. It is a national call. We get between 100 and 150 entries every year, which is wonderful. We cull down the ones that just aren't terrific. And then city staff meets and goes through them to look at safety and appropriateness, if there's a sharp piece that somebody might walk into at face level or something. We then take about the top 40 into, they are screened by Art Sandy Springs to get to the top 40 or so. And we go from there to a group of out-of-house jurors. And they score, and we take the top scorers. We don't necessarily take the top 9 scorers, because sometimes an artist enters 2 pieces that are very similar, and they could both get great scores, but they wouldn't work in the exhibit, and you would never, probably buy both of them. So we bring it down to what makes a great exhibit, with a mix of color and form and materials and shape and sophisticated and playful, to curate a gallery show. We do pay each of these artists $1,500, which I will say is a bargain, for them to deliver these pieces and put them on loan on City Green for a year. And then that $1,500 goes against the cost if it is one of the ones that we buy, that we recommend that y'all buy. Did that cover it?
Precisely.
It's quite a process. We spend about 7 months a year
I think it's
getting
just
to this.
important to remind us how we get to where we are tonight. All right, you've heard the report of Ms. Morrison, the Arts Sandy Springs recommendation. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
So I recommend we approve agenda item 2023-209, resolution to approve the temporary sculpture installation as a component of the Arts Sandy Springs in the open sculpture competition.
Have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2023-209, a resolution approving temporary sculpture installation as a component of the Arts Sandy Springs in the open sculpture competition. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you very much for doing this, and thank you for, I don't know how you go from 100-plus applicants to 9 and some alternates, but God love you and your folks for doing it, okay? Fantastic. So what happens to the ones that are out here now? Because they're going to be gone. Did they just return to the artist, or we're buying 1 or 2 of them, aren't
We're just buying 1 this year.
Okay.
Generally, we are able to buy more than that. They are transported to a location in the city. Actually, the city has agreed to buy 1. It's called Inspire. It's the Angel Wings.
Yep.
And we like the fact that people stand in front of it and take selfies and interact with it.
Okay.
And we're working with Mr. Perry for a location on the new trail. Also, Sandy Springs Conservancy, we approached them, and they are buying single rider to give to the city as a gift to be on the trail. And we are this close. You remember Moon Man Moves, the big colorful one? We are very close to raising the money from our board to buy that piece. And I believe the general feeling is it ought to go in Hammond Park. So our group has walked that with Mr. Perry.
All right. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So we'll have, some of these will actually remain in the future. That's good to hear.
Yes.
All right,
And
so-
if y'all find a few shekels, there's a couple more that we sure would like to have. Just saying.
Well, stay tuned.
Okay.
We fund this
Well,
to a
we've
certain
got a
extent
very
every year,
generous
okay?
community. Maybe we post it and see if somebody will buy it. Any other discussion? Mr. DiGiulio.
Sherry, thank you for doing this. I'm sure it's taken a lot of time and effort over the years, and you've done it for so many years now. Just for my own personal information, how many of these sculptures do we now have in the city? It seems like we have a lot, and we're not that we don't need more, but it seems like we have quite a few. How many do we have in the city now?
I believe the city has bought. Tina, do you have? It's on our website. We have all of them on the website. I am going to say the city has bought 17. Art Sandy Springs has given the city about 14. That might be backwards.
But we have about 30 out there right now?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know that any of us has.
The community's been very generous about buying some of these and helping the city out. So I know we had a group. We have one out here in the.
A new one.
That was just placed there a few months ago.
Yes.
That was by the generosity of our citizens. So, it's not just, people have really gotten into this program, and we're delighted that people are willing to support it.
And one of the things I will say, it's pretty hard to get a donor for a $15,000 or $20,000 piece. The one happened by the, grace of the heavens. And And certain ladies we know who don't take no for an answer. But we
I know a couple of those.
we got a lot of relatively inexpensive, really nice pieces this year. And so to approach somebody and ask them to help buy a $3,000 piece or a $2,000 piece is much easier than an $18,000 piece. Just by happenstance, we got great stuff at the ones that bubble to the top of the scoring. One of the things we do, we have an extra point. You got like an extra credit for value for the dollar. Well, you know, we've got criteria we score on. And part of it is it a good piece of art? Part of it is it innovative or thought-provoking in some way or different. Part of that is how well technically is it made. And then part of it is value for the dollar. So we kind of...
Ms. Rochelle.
Thank you so much. I love seeing all the art spread out throughout Sandy Springs. Do you put the pieces that we are not purchasing on your website in case someone in the city wants to purchase it for their yard? Because a lot of the pieces are beautiful.
They are on there during the exhibit. We don't have a part of the website that says, please purchase these, but we do call. I mean, I specifically approached Sandy Springs Conservancy when I saw Single Rider, and we were very pleased that they bought it. Jim Collins is an elderly gentleman. He's a very famous artist, and he's in many municipal collections. It's almost like if you're a city in the South, you need a Jim Collins, and he's probably not going to produce a lot more years. So I approached Conservancy, and they were generous enough to buy it. And then, again, we're calling friends, and I think it'll be completely internal to our board that we buy Moon Man moves. But we haven't gotten, we will grow to that where we actually put them out there. There's not really a lot of days between when y'all decide what to buy and when we pull them off. They come off August 7th. So, we make the switch.
Also, I'm curious whether Joni and Richard Herzog, are they husband and wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that that must be an interesting household. You want to get invited to dinner there, don't you? Yeah.
Well, I was looking at one that I wanted to buy for my house.
Okay.
But the place where I put it, I've unfortunately been told that I can't put it in the stream buffer, and that's all I got. So I'll have to figure something else out.
And you know you're not going to get a variance.
I would love to be able to look down on art from my deck where Jan and I spend most of our evenings. So I thought it'd be great, but alas.
Alas. There's one that we really had our heart set on for the fire station this year, and that it didn't quite squeeze into the budget. But I'm not completely giving up on that. Okay, we'll need to go through that construction budget and see if they fail to spend a penny here or there. So.
All right, Ms. Morris, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-209, approval of a resolution approving temporary sculpture installation as a component of the Arts Sandy Springs in the open sculpture competition. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
This is agenda item number 2023-210. Consideration of a resolution to approve the First Amendment to Agreement for Services between Art Sandy Springs, Inc. and the City of Sandy Springs. This is presented by Recreation and Parks Director Michael Perry.
Mr. Perry. I was kind of surprised that the chief was going to present this one.
Good evening. This item is for an amendment to the city's contract with Art Sandy Springs. Last summer, the city entered into a contract with Art Sandy Springs for the interim operations of the Abernathy Arts Center. This agreement was for a one-year period. The contract is expiring at the end of this July. Staff is presenting this amendment to the contract for another one-year contract with 4 additional renewal periods. This amendment provides for an annual budget allocation to assist Art Sandy Springs as they cover the funding deficiencies associated with the operations of the Art Center. This the first year allocation is for $50,000 within your FY24 budget. Year 2 allocation is recommended at $60,000. Years 3 through 5 allocations would be $60,000 plus an annual amount, the lesser of a 3% increase or the consumer price index. Art Sandy Springs has done an outstanding job of bringing the Abernathy Art Center back to life and creating a venue for family-centered art programming in Sandy Springs. Staff recommends this contract amendment and welcomes any questions.
All right, you've heard the report of the Director of Recreation and Parks. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve Agenda Item 2023-210 for the adoption of a resolution to approve the First Amendment to Agreement for Services between Art Sandy Springs, Inc. and the City of Sandy Springs.
We have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve Agenda Item 2023-210, a resolution approving the First Amendment to an agreement for services between Art Sandy Springs and City of Sandy Springs. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on Agenda Item 2023-210, a resolution to approve the First Amendment to agreement for services between Art Sandy Springs and the City of Sandy Springs. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item. Chief, you're on.
Agenda item number 2023-211, consideration of approval of a grant agreement with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget on behalf of the state of Georgia for the Violent Crime Reduction Team as a part of the American Rescue Plan Act Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction Grant Program, presented by Police Chief Ken DeSimone.
Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have with me tonight Micah Patrick. She's with the Police Department. She's the Director of Intelligence and Technology, our division there, because her team worked on this, and just want to give her a little credit. But in the fall of last year, we asked Council support in applying for the Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction Grant through the Governor's Office. 2 applications were submitted in November of last year for law enforcement staffing and equipment and technology. The Governor's Office announced the preliminary public safety grants in June 8th of this year for law enforcement staffing, $869,675, for equipment and technology, $752,514. With the acceptance of this grant, we'll establish a violent crime reduction program, and the awarded funds will be used to increase the police department staffing by 3. 1 civilian criminal intelligence analyst and 2 civilian crime scene investigators, and developing the violent crime reduction team, which Mike is over. The team will be provided the necessary equipment and technology needed to implement the program, and it will include 20 license plate readers, 35 cameras, pan, tilt, and zoom, digital forensic workstations, training, software licenses, and standard new hire equipment. The agreements and finalized budgets for both projects must be submitted to the Governor's Office by August 13th of this year. Once the budgets have been approved and executed, the city has until October 31st, 2026 to allocate all funds. Upon conclusion of the grant period, the police department, will conduct a comprehensive assessment to evaluate its success and determine the feasibility and potential continuation of the project. Should it be determined not to continue once the grant concludes, the city has no obligations to retain positions, technology, or equipment. If the grant agreement is approved tonight and the agreements are finalized budget accepted by the Governor's Office, budget amendment will be presented to Mayor and Council for approval. There's no local match required.
You've heard the report of the Chief of Police. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of Agenda Item 2023-211, request for consideration of approval of a grant agreement with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget on behalf of the state of Georgia for the Violent Crime Reduction Team as part of the American Rescue Plan Act Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction Grant Program.
Motion by Mr. Baumann. Do I hear a second? It's a motion by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve Agenda Item 2023-211, the grant agreement with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget on behalf of the state of Georgia for the Violent Crime Reduction Team as part of the American Rescue Plan Act Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction Grant Program. Any discussion? Dr. Kelly.
Chief, I have a couple of questions. About how much of this is just like capital expenditures, like things we can have forever, or,
We plan to keep it as long as it's serviceable. So the equipment, is that what you're referring to, Councilman?
Yeah, the equipment.
Yes. We'll keep it as long as it's serviceable, the equipment.
The ongoing cost is maintenance and like subscriptions to?
Yes, that is in the grant,
Okay.
covered by the grant.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other discussion? Mr. Paulson.
So, Chief, how will you measure how this is done? Like annually, will you look at the seeds of the success of this program and come back to us and let us know how it's done? Is there a way of doing that?
In the crime prevention world and the criminal investigations world, metrics are sometimes hard to come by. It depends on how you set up your measuring to do this. But I can tell you, and that's why I brought Micah here with me, that her and her team are every day, every night, a force multiplier for our detectives and our officers on the street. The work that they do behind the scenes that doesn't get seen by the public is instrumental in solving crimes. And as you all know, we've had a series of armed robberies in the last week, and if it wasn't for the Criminal Intelligence Unit, probably would not have been solved. And we just made 2 arrests on Sunday and looking for a 3rd subject on this. And so the cameras, the license plate readers, the intelligence software that we have, and the analysts and the detectives who work in that unit are truly a force multiplier.
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Chief, thank you. Micah, thank you. Just to clarify, there's no city match on this. This came.
Correct.
This is 100% funded, at least this upfront expenditure of capital for the equipment that's on this list, and the staffing is coming from the
Yes, sir.
grant through the governor's office. So pretty low risk for us here.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you both. I was real excited to see when the governor's list came out last month that we were on the list along with a lot of other cities, and this is something I'm really happy to support.
Absolutely. And that's why I brought Micah with me, because her work, she's been with the city since 2011 and just does a phenomenal yeoman's work behind the scenes. So a lot of people think that it's detectives that solve things and police officers on the street. They do, but all of them. I've told Micah that one crime analyst is worth about 2 to 3 detectives. True? 4?
Yeah. Well, to Mr. Paulson's, I think, question, how do you measure? The hard part is there's no way to measure how many crimes are not prevented because of the technology and the work that your department does. All we can do is track those that do occur and then how many of them we solve, and your solve rate's pretty high.
Yes, sir. Our homicide solve rate is right now 100%. So we're pretty good.
If we could just get them prosecuted.
If we could get them prosecuted.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on Agenda Item 2023-211, approval of a grant agreement with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget on behalf of the state of Georgia for the Violent Crime Reduction Team as part of the American Rescue Act Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction Program. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2023-212, consideration of an intergovernmental agreement for the housing of prison inmates with Pickens County Sheriff's Office. Also presented by Police Chief DeSimone.
Mr. DeSimone again.
Mayor and Council, this is an agreement between us and the Pickens County Sheriff's Office in Jasper, Georgia. As you all know, that's where we house inmates from about 30 days out to 1 year. So this is just an updated agreement with the Sheriff Craig up there in Pickens.
All right, you've heard the report of the Chief of Police. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of Agenda Item 2023-212, and approval of an intergovernmental agreement for the housing of prison inmates with the Pickens County Sheriff's Office.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve Agenda Item 2023-212, a approval of an intergovernmental agreement for the housing of prison inmates in the Pickens County Sheriff's Office. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on Agenda Item 2023-212, approval of an intergovernmental agreement for the housing of prison inmates with the Pickens County Sheriff's Office. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2023-213, consideration of an IGA for the housing of prison inmates with the city of Smyrna, presented by Police Chief DeSimone.
Mr. Chief.
Mayor and council, again, the same thing, but with the city of Smyrna. As you all know, the city of Smyrna is where we take people we arrest on a daily basis and then up to 30 days transported back to our city court. They've got a very well-trained police chief over there, one of the best in the business. So
I don't know, you might get some debate.
I could.
Second best.
Second best.
All right, you've heard the report of the chief of police. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2023-213, request for consideration of an intergovernmental agreement for the housing of prison inmates with the city of Smyrna.
Motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-213, approval of an intergovernmental agreement for the housing of prison inmates with the city of Smyrna. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Yeah, I figured you wouldn't. You haven't discussed the rest of them, so we might as well move on so we can get to these other folks, get them home tonight. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2023-214, consideration of approval of an updated memorandum of understanding by and between the Sandy Springs Police Department and the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Police Department for provision of law enforcement services within the city of Sandy Springs, presented by Police Chief DeSimone.
Chief.
Mayor and council, this is just updating our MOU between the Sandy Springs Police Department and the MARTA Police Department. As everyone knows, we have 3 MARTA stops in the city of Sandy Springs, and we work very closely with the MARTA Police Department on all criminal activity that may occur on their property.
All right, you've heard the report of the chief of police. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-214, approve an updated memorandum of understanding by and between the Sandy Springs Police Department and MARTA for provision of law enforcement services within the city of Sandy Springs.
A motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2023-214, approval of an updated memorandum of understanding by and between the city of Sandy Springs Police Department and the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Police Department for provision of law enforcement services within the city of Sandy Springs. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-214, approving an updated memorandum of understanding by and between the Sandy Springs Police Department and the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Police Department for provision of law enforcement services within the city of Sandy Springs. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-215. This is consideration of approval to declare as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same. This is presented by CFO Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. This request is seeking your approval to declare certain city property as surplus. The city's police department has property which is outside of the service date and no longer a valid use for the productivity of the business of the city. The exhibit provided lists all equipment for consideration of categorizing as surplus. The purchasing policy and code of ordinance directs our purchasing team to dispose of these items under the supervision of the city manager in the most advantageous manner. Choosing to move forward allows the purchasing team to make items available for sale, donation, or disposal. Declining the request requires us to maintain a storage location for this property. We're seeking approval of classifying these 2 items as surplus.
You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-215, approval to declare as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2023-215, the declaration as surplus certain property owned by the city of Sandy Springs and directing disposal of the same. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
If I may. So this says donation to Pine Lake. That's another city?
Yes.
So we're donating these 2 cars? There are 2 cars? Donating 2 vehicles to Pine Lake? Okay. Where's Pine Lake?
It's in DeKalb County. right between Stone Mountain and Memorial Drive on Rock Bridge Road.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we provided them with some of our surplus property. It's about as big as this room. Not much bigger, right, Chief? It's kind of like if you know Mountain Park, North Fulton, very similar. It's a community that was around a lake, and it's right next to Stone Mountain. So when I was on the council there, I was very familiar with Pine Lake. And they have a lake, and the houses are around the lake, and they created a city, 100 years ago. It's an old city, been there for a long time. So without a lot, they used to be a speed trap. That's how they used to fund the city. And you didn't go over 25 miles an hour through Pine Lake, or you contributed to their budget. And so they cleaned that up. So now they don't have any other way of getting this equipment. So it's a good deal. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Dr. Kelly.
I just wondered, in general, when we don't donate these, and let's say we sell, how is it accounted? Like the funds that we receive, where does it show up in our numbers?
Any funds received show up in miscellaneous income.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-215, approving a declaration as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Now moving to the next item, will the clerk please read item 2023-204?
Yes, this is consideration of the variance from section 8.2.10 applicability, fences and walls of the development code to allow the use of concertina wire for construction of the fleet maintenance facility. This is presented by Director of Facilities, Capital Construction and Building Operations, David Wells.
Mr. Wells.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have Yara Reimers-Bond, our lead architect for Jericho, and Larry Latimer, security consultant, here tonight to help with us answer some questions on this agenda item. So one of the questions we had was about the code. This is a chart here to explain the code use considerations. This is a rendering of what the building, the pre-engineered metal building would look like. The frontage, the part of Roswell Road will be on the top right picture. The left side of that building will be aligned with Roswell Road. That's what you would see with some, there will be some trees and shrubs down below on that. Traffic, one of the questions was traffic. Right now we have 340 fleet vehicles. We anticipate about 15 vehicles going up there every day doing some business with fleet. That's what they're doing here at the Bluestone building. Right now in the project, we do not have the gas pumps in the project, but when we do put the gas pumps in, we're anticipating roughly 40 vehicles a day going up there to fuel up. And then there's 25 parking spots on the site. 4 of them are for our AV cars and 2 of them are ADA. Traffic counts, which were conducted in April 2021, we got this from Public Works, shows you the traffic counts in that area. This is a site here. This is the site of the fleet. The blue is the 908 linear feet of security fencing. Sort of hard to read there, but it shows you where the rolling fence is. The red line along Roswell Road, which is about 30 feet off of the curb, is our ornamental fencing. And then about 70 feet off of the curb is the corner of the building just to the south of that property. These are the trees we're planting. You can see they get rather large when they're fully grown. We will be putting in at least 8-foot trees when we install them. There's also shrubs along the front end of that property, screening the fence, the ornamental fencing. This is the ornamental fencing. It's 6 foot tall. have columns 24 in center, and that's the red line there, and then we'll have a rolling gate which will be access controlled. It'll be open during the daytime and closed at nighttime. And this is the proposed vinyl coated chain link fence that would go around the south part of the parcel all the way back behind where the postal office is and come up to the north end and stop right at the edge of the building. It has concertina wire, and it's $45,000 to install. This is an option that we looked at. This is steel fencing. It's 8 foot tall, vice the 6 foot chain link fence. It gives you a little more security, but the price is a little more. It's triple the price. And then this surrounding area, we went out to the collision center. You can see they have barbed wire fence on theirs. Back at the post office, that is the fence that comes up to the back end of our property. And that's got barbed wire on it too. And with that, I'll take questions.
All right, you've heard the report of the Director of Facilities and Capital Construction and Building Operations. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-204, consideration of a variance from section 8.2.10, applicability fences and walls of the Development Code to allow the use of concertina wire for construction of the fleet maintenance facility.
I have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2023-204, a variance from section 8.2.10, applicability fences and walls of the Development Code to allow the use of concertina wire for construction of the fleet maintenance facility. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, folks, for coming. So, a couple of questions. Your traffic counts, you've got 15 and 20,000 vehicles a day go by here. That's what the tally was. And you're saying at one point there's 40 vehicles a day going to go into this area? Something in that range?
Yes, sir. That's a 24-hour period because police will be going up there to fuel up.
Okay. So we're not talking hundreds of cars here?
No.
We're talking, okay. Thank you very much. That was one of the questions that some of the folks had. You know, there's going to be a big traffic jam because of this. And
yeah, we had our fleet manager pull the data from WEX, which is our gas card, and that's where we average right around 40 people fuel up every day.
Okay. All right. And again, if it isn't 40, maybe it's 50, but we're still not talking hundreds. So this question about razor wire, concertina wire, everybody has this vision that as you walk by this, there's going to be, prison wall-like fence that is going to be alongside Roswell Road. Would you bring back the picture that depicts where this fencing goes? Let's just talk through this a little more. It has a red line on it, I think. There's a blue line.
It's a blue line, I think. It was early on. There, that's the one.
All right.
It's like a lag on the.
Any way to blow this baby up? Anybody know how to blow this up? We can see a little better. That's better. All right. So, that's even. Now it's all blue. You're trying to trick me here. All right. So, let's start at the top side. There's no concertina wire along the northern border of this until you get back behind the corner of the building. That's what I'm reading here?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's not visible from Roswell Road. The southern corner is obviously one that appears to be closer to the highway. How far back is that corner from the highway?
The corner's 30 feet off the curb, and there's about 40 feet from the corner of that lot to the building that's south of that, the Caliber Collision Center.
So the blue line stretch from the left-hand side where it meets the red line, this concertina wire will start there and work back?
Yes, sir.
And you say the building is 40 feet back?
Their
building is 40 feet back?
From that corner, yes.
Okay. You said there's other sites that have razor wire above. Obviously, you showed me some of the pictures. You're saying the post office behind there has the same as razor wire as well?
Yes, it's barbed wire.
Barbed wire, okay. All right, and then one of the questions was other sites that were looked at. What other sites did you look at as places for this? And I'm asking because at one point, I thought this was going to be on the police headquarters property.
Yes,
We
Caroline,
talked about that at one point.
could you please bring up the finalized site plan for the proposed site plan for the upper lot at the police headquarters?
That's where we originally
Yes, so
had
that's
this
where
thing.
we originally started putting that on the back end of that property.
Yeah, okay. And that's where the fire department's now going?
So a couple of the challenges up there. So we have a fire station going in up there.
Yep.
And
Here we go.
And right now, Yara, help me out here, the parking for public is about 40 spots.
That's correct.
So that is going to be some of our overflow parking for courts, the middle parking lot up there in the upper lot, future. And then we have a shooting range, can't read it up there, there you go.
An indoor shooting range?
Yeah, firearms training center.
Let's make sure
That's
it's indoors.
A future firearms training center. And that is where the fleet was going to be.
Okay.
And we were trying to design a site where we had the fleet and the shooting range and the fire station. But then parking became a premium up there because we need parking if we're partnering with the local agencies. We need parking for courts. So we looked around the city. We looked at Trowbridge. We had looked at Trowbridge before back in 2016 or 2017. It was substantial when we were moving into this building. The previous city manager, John McDonough, had me look at that site. The problem with that site that we
That's
have...
where we keep the road equipment and the salt and stuff like that?
That is our city warehouse. We keep all, Public Works houses their salt spreaders out of there, their salt deposits out of there. We have all of any kind of project they have all their added stock in there. The traffic folks work out of there. They have all their traffic products. So that's the warehouse side. We do have an undeveloped part just to the east of that, and that's where the salt deposits are right now. The problem with that site, to develop it, it would create, you need to have underground detention and a very substantial retaining wall on the back end of that property. There's about a 45-foot difference between the Trowbridge property and the public shopping center down below. So the cost wasn't effective for us. We did have that property up on the north end, up the site that we're developing right now. It's been abandoned for quite some time. We tried to surplus it. We received 0 bids on it.
Okay. All right, so that's good. And then the last question is the visual appearance. One of the comments I've heard is that this building is going to be this ugly metal prefab building. So one of the questions I have is, can we make this thing look better from the street? I saw a picture the other day. Somebody sent it that was in color, and I thought it was better looking than the picture you just.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a rendering, an actual rendering from like street view, which we did. That would show you how aesthetically much better this thing is going to look than the way it is right now, because we're going to have the shrubs and everything. We're going to have the ornamental fencing along the front end of it. We are going to take the city logo off the front and move it to the side so you can see it from the street. But the only part of this building you're really going to see from the road is those top windows, correct?
Could I ask and I've got the same issues that Councilman Paulson has. It looks rather stoic. And I know that's not what your intent is, but this is just a basic drawing to show basically the massing of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Can you kind of carry us through what this building will actually look like?
So what we did here to improve the aesthetics of the building is the side that is facing Roswell Road is brick. You're not seeing metal panels on that side.
What are you seeing on that side? The side facing Roswell Road is now what?
Brick.
Oh, it's going to be brick. Oh, okay.
Correct. So the west elevation that you see there, that's what you see from Roswell Road. That's parallel to Roswell Road. We also, what you don't see here that we did is we're carrying a brick base for the building with the metal panels above. We're carrying the brick to the entrance as well,
So around the corner.
around the corner, correct.
Okay.
And as Dave said, we're going to take that logo and move it to face Roswell Road as well.
Okay. Well, that was the biggest concern that a lot of people had, was this thing's just going to look pedestrian. Stoic is a nice way of saying it, but so you put brick on it to make it look better.
So
All
yes,
right.
it is brick, and then you have the aesthetic fence in the front. So you don't have any security fencing in the front with brick pilasters that will match the finish that's on the building.
And one final question, then I'll let it go back to the floor. This property on the side where, the south side that runs to where the building is, that's about 40 feet. And that's really the only fence that could possibly be seen by anybody in Roswell. The rest of it is buried back behind it.
That is correct. And we also showed a little bit earlier where we're going to have large trees in those areas as well. So landscaping is going to soften it up.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, I'd like for the security consultant to carry us through why we need the wiring on the top.
It's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that question. This is a police facility, no matter how you look at it. It has the same security concerns that we have at the police headquarters. And since this is a police facility, you'll have police assets sitting in the yard. You have future plans for a fuel island in the same vicinity. This is a targeted environment. And it's unfortunate that our police have to worry about those kinds of things where they live, where they conduct their business, not just out on the streets. And so the security component is essential to protect both the police who work in there, the staff that work with them, and the vehicles that belong to the city, the assets that belong to the city. So here we have a condition where we're kind of fighting aesthetic with our need to protect the facility and protect those staff members that are within the facility. So we believe that the least expensive and the best application that you can provide to your staff while answering some of the aesthetic concerns is to build a fence that is a combination of a high fence, 8 foot high fence is what we recommend. And we recommend that some delay element be in that fence. And the reason that we want a delay element is we want those people there, and delay element would be the razor wire. Anything that would slow someone down attempting to gain access to the facility. We're following as many of those SEPTED principles that were mentioned earlier as possible. We want this place to be visible from the street. Roswell Road is a great place for this to get a lot of unintended surveillance from the public, and you have a great example of that here in City Springs, and that's what we want to accomplish there, and that's why the front fence is much more easy to see through, while we're carrying through with that vinyl coated fence, because that vinyl coated fence is easier to see through as well. The razor wire is an attempt to slow down someone who attempts some criminal activity against the police facility.
And I have one more question, like Chief DeSimone, and then I'll get out of the way. And my question to you, Chief, is this is a very visible place on Roswell Road. Is there any deterrent effect by having police cars frequenting that area and being parked there?
There would be, but it's also a target. And just today, I sent the city manager a photograph of a Sandy Springs police vehicle that someone tried to torch a few years ago at the officer's residence. And this officer's residence was inside the city of Sandy Springs. So it wasn't in another county, it wasn't in another city, and it was off Peachtree Dunwoody Road. So just because you have a police car is a deterrent for some people, but it's a target for others. As everybody knows, the city of Atlanta is really under attack now by a domestic terrorist group, 2 weekends ago, I believe, they tried to firebomb a police facility, and they were successful in destroying some police equipment. Their Chief Sherbaum, told me that Sunday morning, he called me just as a heads up, that if it had not been for a motorcycle officer turning around because he thought it was going to rain and going back to the facility, there would have been maybe 40 police vehicles destroyed in an entire precinct. So to answer your question, Mayor, it deters some people, but for other people who do not like law enforcement, it draws them. And in today's world, that is what we've got. And there's police departments, most police departments in America are understaffed. And this defund the police movement has really hurt criminal investigations, response times to 911. When you defund the police, you cut the amount of time it takes for police officers to get to your home in the middle of the night to answer an emergency call. And that's the world we're living in right now.
All right, thank you. Ms. Rochelle.
A lot of the complaints I heard were about the Concertine wire, and you showed a picture of the ornamental fence with the spikes. How much along the sides, I understand that, I know the back is fine, nobody can see it from Roswell Road. What about putting that along the sides where you can potentially see it from Roswell Road, and then put the wire and the other fencing in the back? Is that an option?
Yeah, that is actually a good option. I mean, that's something you guys could vote on. I mean, you guys decided to do that. That's an option.
Is this the wrought iron looks better than the wires? What you're saying?
Is this equivalent from a security? I mean, is this just a cost issue, or is what's being displayed here meet the delay condition? All right, so because I did hear you to say that you included in your factors least expensive. We could make a decision to spend the money and do what's shown here without compromising security. Is that right? Okay. That's good information. Thank you. Great question, Jody.
Anybody else? Dr. Kelly.
All right, just a quick question. How much of, just a financial question from May 30th, I can't recall, how much of a surplus are we running as it relates to this project in terms of the numbers? I remember there was a surplus, or maybe that's changed, I don't know.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I think it was around $260,000 surplus.
So we have about $260,000.
And it was more of a contingency that we were leaving there because there were a number of items that we had already cut out of the budget.
Okay.
But yes, to your point, there is some money there. We'll have to be very vigilant in all of our other areas to make sure that we don't have change orders.
Okay.
One of the things we VE'd out for at the moment was the canopy and the fuel pumps for the fueling station. So we're putting the tanks in now so we can do our civil work in there. But that was something we were looking at with the $260,000. If there's savings in the project, then we can go back in and put that canopy and the pumps back in. So.
Okay. We took pumps out of that site, didn't we? I wasn't here. I was just.
We did. It was.
We didn't take pumps out.
Site.
We took out leaking gas
There were
tanks.
tanks there. There was a little gas station there.
But I think all the
pumps
tanks
were
had been
gone.
removed. Yeah, the pumps had
The
already been
canopy
removed.
was there, yes.
We had a couple of leaky gas tanks that were leaching into the soil that we had to clean up.
Okay. A couple other questions. I just heard a mention of bricks. That's the first I've heard of the bricks. Was that always a part of it, or did that just come up?
That was in the design. It was design consideration of what it was going to look like on Roswell Road.
Okay, so it's actually very important to me to see this with all the design elements. I mean, I guess everyone else has a really good imagination, but
Jericho's working on a rendering. It's just we couldn't get it done in a couple days. So
you may have already said this, but the height. Can you remind me what the height of the building?
Height of the building?
Yeah. And because I'm trying to compare it a little bit to the adjacent parcel. Caliber, yeah. So the height of it.
So the front of that's land growth,
That's
how
what-
high is that, you know? Over the door there?
I know we had a clearance that we were working on off the back side of the building because we're working on a single slope. I can't remember off the top of my head, then there's a mezzanine level in it. So there was clearances that we were holding at that back side that we needed for it.
Oh.
But I think at the back side it was about 20 feet.
Okay. Well, I'm really trying to compare it to the parcels around it, just to get a sense of whether it'll stand out or not. How is the height? Let me go here. Let's talk about the actual function of the facility. What's going to be going on in there?
I can speak to that. So currently what Fleet does is they take the vehicles, just like when we surplus a vehicle, they have to take all the special police equipment off. That's a lot of what they do in there. They take the light bars off. When you get new vehicles, they got to put decals on. So we're doing, it's like a special upfit of the vehicle. It's not maintenance per se, because we contract with Eddie's Automotive, actually Magic Mike now, over in Cobb County. That's our actual automotive mechanic that we take our fleet vehicles to. This is really just, windshield wipers. The idea was if someone comes in, fills up their car, they need new windshield wipers, our fleet manager can go over there and help them out, change the windshield wipers out real quick, things like that, fill up the windshield wiper fluid, things like that.
But it's also putting in specialized equipment and the technology, and we get the cars in certain conditions. They're outfitted with police equipment in them, but we have add-ons, and that's where this occurs. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Chief?
the GPS locators, when we put that system in, the company will come out. They need a place to install it. They come out and install it inside the fleet base.
And how often are we doing stuff like that on average? Switching out GPS equipment?
Almost every day. I would say every day of the week except Saturday and Sunday. Another big thing, too, is radios, police radios. Not only the installation, but the updates of the software inside the radios. So there's constantly cars in the police garage or the city garage every day.
Okay. Where are we doing that now?
Over here at the garage.
Okay.
Over on,
So we're not the service we're providing in the fleet maintenance place is not necessarily like replacing something that we're outsourcing.
No, we're not replacing transmissions or engine work or anything heavy like that. Like Mr. Wells said, minor things like windshield wiper fluid, windshield wiper blades, and then the equipment inside the vehicles that you wouldn't go to an automotive repair shop for. Cages, striping, antennas that get knocked off, and radio updates. Radio updates is a big thing.
Yeah. What I'm unclear about, and thank you, Chief, I guess I don't understand why this building has to look like a car repair place when it's not really a car. I mean, there's not really heavy auto uses occurring. I just wonder, to what extent is the design flexible? If we're just, replacing radios and I don't know.
We have 4 bays in there to bring the vehicles into,
Right.
to do these kind of upfits in conditioned areas.
Okay.
So they're not doing it out in the rain.
Yeah, I get that. I get that we need a building. I just wonder if we could consider putting more effort into the way it looks, especially since it's not going to be, I actually thought for a second that it would be like sort of a standard, almost like a mechanic type of place, but it's not. And so I wonder, does that allow us any flexibility in the aesthetic? That's just something
I'll let the architect speak to that.
Yeah. I know we're doing brick,
Correct. So here what we're doing is we're improving the finishes on the building. And what you don't see here is we're adding also water table brick around the entire building. And then you have the metal panels above.
Right. Okay. So here's where I am on this then. Let me say, okay, so great point by Councilwoman Reichel regarding, incorporating the better-looking fence where people could see it. That's a pretty good idea. But I'm not comfortable with this until I can see it with the design elements, until I know the height, until I have a sense of how this building compares to the buildings around it, until we can vet this thing the way we vet other types of projects. It's just too important, as you can kind of tell from the public comment. So to me, there's just a lot of questions unanswered, and they haven't quite been confirmed today, although I do appreciate the work that's been put in. Thank you.
Mr. DiGiulio, then Mr. Baumann. And then Ms. Mueller.
Yeah, Dave, I had a question about, could you bring back up the site plan? Okay. When you made your comments on here, I think you mentioned that the contiguous properties all had their own fencing with barbed wire or something. What are the contiguous properties here?
The one to the south of is Caliber Collision. It's an automotive place. They do have barbed wire around their fence, falling off, but it's on
Now,
there.
does their fence go to where our fence would be, or is there?
There is a fence, but I can't really see it because it's covered with bushes and vines and kudzu and everything.
So we're gonna take down their fence and improve it with our fence?
We'll have to take all that down, all the overgrowth shrubs.
But right now it has the barbed wire on it.
Well, from what I saw today on the south portion of it, it does.
It does.
We're not talking about the shared fence, are we? No.
About what?
Shared fence.
Well, no, it's going to be. Well,
Yeah, no.
yeah, it's going to have one fence between the two properties.
That's currently their fence. It's up. We're going to have a fence there too.
Okay, so there are going to be two fences.
Mm-hmm.
And then, all right, well, okay, and one of them has already got barbed wire on it.
I can't tell with our adjoining fence, the fence on their property line that joins with our property. I can't tell because there's so much overgrowth on top of the fence.
Okay, and then what about in the rear of the property?
So we are purchasing the two properties behind there. On the back end of that property is the postal service, and
Right.
they do have barbed wire all the way around there. Of course, it's fallen apart too, but they have barbed wire on their property line too.
Okay, and then to the, I guess that would be the north side.
I canvassed them today too, and I went back in there. There's just some chain link fencing in there. There's a couple businesses that come down, I think it's High Tower Trail, that butt up to our property, plus the car wash. The car wash does not have a fence on it.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're adding fencing to the fencing that's already there.
Well, we're adding security fence to our site.
All right, but we're adding security fencing to a place where there's already fencing. So it's not like it's an open space
Yes.
and we're all of a sudden putting in fencing and barbed wire.
Definitely. Every one of the parcels have fencing along.
Every one of the parcels have fencing on it, and most of it that you can see already has barbed wire or some type of a security feature to the fencing.
Two of the parcels do. The bigger, larger parcels, the back end is completely barbed wired. And
That's the post office.
Post office in the south, which is the collision center, is barbed wired too.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baumann.
Thank you. So if you go back to the picture of what Jody was asking about, just to be absolutely clear, that does not compromise safety or delay. That would be an acceptable use of fence. A question for Dan or code or I don't know, somebody here from community development. Would a variance be required for this fence that's being shown right now, or could that can be installed without a variance?
Kristen can answer that. The material would not need a variance if it were a developer. The height, I don't know, Kristen, I can't remember.
8 feet is fine.
8 feet, okay.
So that would be a permitted?
Yes.
Without coming for a variance? Because as I see I mean, we're going off on a lot of tangents here tonight. Understandably, 10 folks came out and we received some emails. There's a lot of other issues that are being, I mean, I think what I hear people saying is they don't want this use there. I get it. This has been something we've been talking about for quite a long time. This is not new for the project there. And my recollection is we've talked a lot about design as it faces Roswell Road. We moved to the brick. But I guess from a procedure and a process standpoint, I don't like the fact that once we've decided that we're going to bring this before council, I mean, I know that City Attorney make an argument that we don't even have to do that, that the normal procedure would be that there would be notice and it would be on the public hearing agenda. So if we were going to go forward with this, I would vote no, or to defer it, to put on the public hearing. But I'm prepared to vote no on the variance because I want to go with what's being shown right here. I mean, I think this is not what other people are doing. This is what the city is doing. And the point being made is well taken. Maybe we're not going to get all the way home for what some people want is to remove that. But their point is well taken in terms of the aesthetic and what this is what the city can control. We can't necessarily control the historic use and design elements or barbed wire of other properties, but we can do this. And if you're telling me we can deliver the same safety and security for our police equipment, our police force, and our public service people, I'm all for it. I think it's not nothing, but it's a drop in the bucket for what we're doing. So I'm not going to support a variance under any conditions tonight, just from a procedural and process standpoint. But hopefully, whether we can amend this. This is a variance, so I'm at some point you want to bring us back a budget amendment or just to incorporate this budget. I'm all for this all the way around, okay, and not where we can avoid. We may run into a situation where we have to use that wire, whether it's at the police headquarters. I'm not precluding that everywhere all the time. I'm going to be very clear about that, but we can do this. I mean, we have a solution right in front of us. It is not before us right now whether we're doing this project at this location or not. If that comes before us, we'll take that up. And it is not before us right now. We can do more, as Councilwoman Dr. Kelly said, we can do more with the design. I thought we've done plenty, and if you want to, frankly, if it's visible, if there are areas that are visible and we want to just brick the building, I'm open to that as well. But this is a function we've decided for that location. That's not the discussion we're really having tonight. We're having a discussion about the variance for the fencing. So I oppose the variance for the fencing on both procedural grounds and the substantive use of it, and whatever procedure we need to take to allocate dollars to do this fence all the way around in lieu of the razor wire, I'm for that.
Ms. Mueller.
So I just want to recognize another comment that the Hunt Cliff residents brought forward was that, as in the past, the city has worked with different neighborhoods on different projects. I know we're not compelled or have to do that, but I know that we often do that. And I just think that we need to step back, and when we have these projects that are in the neighborhoods, that we do reach out to the neighborhood associations, and it may not change the ultimate outcome, but at least people will be informed and know and may have input. So I think that's very important, and for whatever reason, it seems like that didn't happen here, and so we just need to make sure we try to do that going forward. Thanks.
All right.
Mayor Paul. Sorry.
Michelle.
To Andy's point, which I totally agree with, using the expensive, nice, ornamental fence, but in the back, I don't know that it's necessary, because what is behind there in the very back?
In the very back is the postal, a secured lot for the Postal Service.
I mean, can we do, half the expensive, and then, like I said the first time, and then in the back, we'd still have to have this variance, though, right, to do the wire in the back?
Yes.
I mean, it just seems like a lot of money to spend on a fence that nobody's going to see in the very back. And that's a lot of fence in the back.
It is.
Well, let me just make one point, and this is up to council to make this decision. But just let me remind you that our current fleet facilities across the street. The plan is to tear that down before the end of the year. Depending on how long we delay this and the police have no place for this, it could have a real impact on this project across the street. So you have to keep in mind that there is a domino effect. It's your decision, but there is a domino effect if we take this building out and they have no place for this to go. So,
Mayor Paul.
Mayor, if I could, just a second.
Sure.
So the reason we're here before you, in front of you tonight, is because we applied for the LDP. So we need these variances for the LDP. The reason we need the LDP approved is because our metal building is coming in September. So we need to do site work to prepare for the building. I just want to say that our timetable is pretty tight to get the building erected.
and which has an implication for what we've been planning across the street. So there's a domino effect here that you need to be aware of as you make these decisions.
So point of inquiry, Mayor.
Sure.
On the timing, if we were to defer a variance decision to the public hearing calendar that is our first meeting in August, would that...
That's a question for Dave because of the time. I mean, you've got a building that's going to be arriving with no place to put it.
Well, I'm just wondering what I'm wondering is the first meeting is in 2 weeks from today?
Yes.
Yeah, so
August
1st.
Mayor, if I could clarify, if we go with this option that you see on the screen right here, yes, it is more expensive, but staff has looked at it and it does not require a variance. So staff internal to community development would be able to move forward tomorrow with issuing the land disturbance permit. There won't be concertina wire on this site at all, not on the back. There'll be no chain link. It will be this more expensive option. If you defer, and we have to come back for a mix of the two, then there is the delay that happens.
Well, but could they go to the LDP with this plan? I mean, we could give you some authority to go with this plan, or not have the wire, but then leave the variance on the schedule, and then if we were to decide, they can amend their application for the back. We got to be able to do this. I mean,
we talked to the community development director. She was fine with that, giving us the LDP without the fence on there. And
I'm trying to preserve the process here. Just one vote, but I still ultimately, I'm really open-minded about the back and the visibility. Like I said, I'm not going to be opposed to the razor wire everywhere, anytime. But if that becomes an acceptable outcome,
all right. I think
Mayor Paul, may I? I've been trying to get in here. May I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to get us around to. We have somebody who would like to make a motion, so I'm trying to get us to that.
I'm trying to move forward here. I have a plan that potentially can move forward here, and that is, I would be open to amending my motion to include the ornamental wire fence along that south wall from Rousel Road down to the classic collision building, because that's really the only visible area that we're talking about. And then the fencing that's behind it that nobody sees can still be the concertina wire with the cable. This gives you an architectural fence along the front that's nice looking, preserves the security, and we don't have to spend the extra money needlessly on a beautiful ornamental wire fence or wrought iron fence that no one's going to see.
That was the motion that Ms. Rochelle wanted to make.
Well, I'm amending my motion.
And that's fine.
At your suggestion.
All right, that's fine.
Okay, so that's what I would.
All right, we have Mr. Paulson has amended his motion. Mr. DiGiulio, do you accept the amendment? All right, any other discussion on the revised amendment? We are building the fence, this fence, to approximately right there. In other words, roughly about a third of the way down on that red line up there, roughly a third of the way down, again, roughly, to...
Where are we giving the variance? That's what's on the table right now.
The variance would be for the the wiring as we have been shown for the portion that starts roughly up there about a third of the way on the south side and goes around the rest of the property.
That's the posture. We are voting on a variance tonight. They can do whatever they want. But so that's what I want to clarify is where is the variance?
The
Somebody
variance-
could describe it for the minutes.
The variance is for the portion.
It's for the southern portion of the boundary that goes from Roswell Road.
Yeah, we need to
and
get back to that diagram. That was the red line.
Yeah, the red line.
I understand. We got a lot going.
Do you agree that's what we need to define?
That one.
There you go.
So it would be, the concertina wire would be applied from the portion at the east corner of the Caliber Collision, no, the west corner of the Caliber Collision building to the terminating point of our parcel back at the post office, then up to the north at the end of our parcel, and then loop back around and end at the corner of the building. So you'd have approximately 40 feet of the ornamental fencing that would be applied on the south portion, the southwest portion of the parcel.
That's
A point of order, Rusty.
All right, state your point.
The only thing we need to vote on really is a variance tonight, because that's what's before us, and defining the outer boundaries of that variance is what I think we need to do. Do you agree, Mr. City Attorney?
The posture of this discussion is you voted on this, I know of 3 times, to build this facility here for this design. In implementing the design that you have authorized the staff to do, it has come to the part of the drawing where the security fence is outside of what is normally in the development code. The ordinance that brings this before you tonight is not in the development code. This is the management seeking to carry out your previous votes to build this facility with the design that they've received, and they're bringing it as the management of the property to the representatives of the owners of the property to say, do you want to step outside of the development code for the purpose of putting razor wire up? And what I hear the amendment being is that the south line of this property would be the ornamental fence, and the variance would be the rest of it around the back and on the north side.
That's correct. That's correct. That's the posture. All right. Any other discussion?
Yep.
Dr.
I
Kelly.
did have a question. Because I think someone said it earlier about just having a brief discussion about egress. Can someone just speak to that? Is there anyone on staff who could just speak to the data as it relates to the ability or inability to pull a left turn out of there? Or I know we talked about like traffic counts, but that doesn't exactly speak to egress. So just to put minds.
Well, Chief, I know you've looked at it. You also have some blue lights you can turn on if you need to. This is normally something that we ask Marty for, but I'm not about to put him on the hot seat on this one.
Yeah. Councilman, we currently are doing a traffic study on that entrance. We released Jericho a couple weeks ago to do a traffic study on the entrance.
Oh, great. Okay, I definitely want to wait on that before I. Yeah, that'd be great. That information.
No, he works for us. Yeah. All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. And the question is on the amended motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we are going to authorize a variance for concertina wire around the perimeter, but on the south side, at a point to be determined by visual inspection, that will not allow that wire to be seen from Roswell Road, and then from that point forward to Roswell Road, the ornamental fencing, the security fencing that was shown in the illustration, the photograph, will constitute that portion of the fence. Does everybody understand what we're voting on? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
The item is approved. Thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why they call it sausage making, but we do try and figure out the best way to do things and try and come up with solutions as far as we can to take into consideration all the input that we get. So thank you. All right. Moving on to reports. A couple of things that Chief Sanders, I got a letter from a gentleman by the name of Daniel Lee Gwynn from Columbus, Georgia, commending our fire and inspectors and investigators David Dunn and Patrick Coletta for their performance in the investigation of a fire which occurred at Avia at North Springs on May 27th. I will provide the letter to you with some other notes that I'm going to use in a minute. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that this gentleman, who is a fire professional himself, was duly impressed by the performance of our fire marshal's office, and so I wanted to let you know. And also, I got a wonderful email. We know that in Miss Mueller's complex we had a very serious fire a few weeks ago, and the lady who lives in one of the units next to that sent me a very nice note about commending both the fire and the police and the quickness of the response, the ability to contain that fire very quickly and minimize the amount of damage that could have occurred. She was duly impressed by the performance of our first responders in that instance as well. I do have to say that I am a little concerned about the number of apartment fires we've had lately. Chief Sanders, can you kind of talk? I mean, it just seems to me that we've had a number of them, very significant, not just apartment, but multifamily. The one that in Miss Mueller's neighborhood was also a multifamily that was contained, but we seem to have had an outbreak of apartment fires lately. Can you comment a little bit on what the concerns are there?
Yes, Mayor.
And I apologize because I'm catching you flat-footed. I didn't give you a heads up, but I knew you'd be able to handle it.
On the previous apartment fire that we had, we have had a number of fires in River Run community, the Azalea Park, and each one of those fires have been human error. And so, you know, we have some incidents. This last one is still under investigation. We did have some comments that lead us to believe that a grill was involved, but we have no facts yet because we're still working that particular case. But that is a problem that we have had in a number of our apartment fires, is the grilling. And we work with the communities. We also work with code enforcement, and we do our inspections as well. But unfortunately, it does occur, especially during the summertime. And the other challenge that we have is a lot of folks have repairs made in their units and our townhomes and condos, and they're not making the proper repairs and causing problems with the wiring and those kind of things. So there's a lot of factors that go into play. 90% of the fires are human error, and one of the biggest challenges we have in the apartment complexes is just have these are older buildings. You have done a tremendous job in approving any type of measures that we've come before you to try to prevent fires, and unfortunately we do have a couple of our communities where we do continue to have catastrophic fires. We also had a fire in Mr. Giulio's district, 4th of July, that was done by fireworks, taking fireworks after they've been discharged, thinking they're out, put them in a trash can, a plastic trash can, and go to bed, and catches the trash can on fire and catches the side of the building the house on fire. But we also got a great letter from that community as well, because the fire was well advanced when our units got on the scene, but was able to contain it, actually starting the other house beside it on fire as well. So that's the reason.
So it's your advice not to set off fireworks in your living room?
Absolutely not. And if you do discharge them, wet the material, the product down before you trash it.
It is a source of concern, and I had a conversation with the city attorney earlier today about getting a little bit more cooperation from our apartment managers on the policing and enforcement of requirements that we already have, which you don't grill on your patio. You don't do these sorts of things. So they're violating our ordinances when they do it to begin with. I would urge you to get together with our communications department. Let's see if we can do some education on.
And we have, and to be honest with you, we ran into a challenge with that community after the fire. We attempted to go out and put flyers on the doors, and we were told we were not allowed to do that. And so we are really running into some challenges there. We have done some mass communication and working hand in hand with the communications department. But we do run into challenges with some of our complexes, and that is one of them that we are constantly challenged with.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can, people's lives, you've done a great job. We haven't had a loss of life, but that is a distinct concern that I think all of us share in these apartment fires, because we've had to rescue people. We've had people who've had to jump.
And we had rescue people that day.
Yeah.
Fortunately, our crews were training at the national park there, and right there above, right there on the river. And so they were actually the trainees the trainers were actually eating there at the tavern, and when they were coming back, they saw the building on fire. And so they came around and actually rescued a gentleman that was wheelchair bound, and actually got him out of his unit. So thank goodness they were there. And one of our trucks was up there at the training site when that fire came out. But that fire, it was so quick that vinyl siding is the worst thing you can put on a house, especially apartment building. And when it starts on the outside and it immediately goes up into that roof, but it also gets on top of that roof and begins to burn. And once that fire gets its load and energy, it's very difficult to stop.
Well, I'm very disappointed that we are not getting cooperation from some of our apartment managers, because the potential for loss of life and severe injury is so great in these fires, in any residential fire, or any fire anywhere, but particularly in multifamily. And we may need to look at some things that we need to do to give us more leverage in being able to have those conversations with apartment managers. It's very disappointing. Thank you.
Mayor Paul, question though.
Sure.
Wouldn't the insurance companies be able to, could we go that avenue? Because I know in Autumn Chase, I know that we have, I'm sure with the fire, we'll probably have some changes to our insurance, but that's part of it. We're not supposed to, this fire in our community wasn't because of a grill, but we can't have grills. They have to be so many feet from either any building and so forth. Otherwise, we could lose our insurance.
And the wonderful part about your community is it has brick firewalls. And so that is very great to have that in that community. But Mayor, we will continue to work. You mentioned David Dunn. He and Patrick, they spend every day of their working day in our apartment complexes. And they spend, and because of their efforts, we do have a significant reduction in what it could be because of the enforcement. But we do have challenges right there. Speaking of the insurance adjuster, when they came out to inspect with David Dunn, they did notice on this particular building that the intermissent paint application they did not feel was adequate. And they did spot check some of the other buildings in there, and they did not have adequate intermissent paint that they were supposed to apply. And the insurance company is now having problems with that. So we are working that angle as well with the insurance adjuster.
Turn your microphone on. Microphone.
Did you say that we were putting flyers out at doors to let people know about safety, and they stopped you from
We
putting
attempted,
flyers?
yes, ma'am.
And what, did they give you a reason?
Just didn't want them on their property doing that, so.
Okay, that makes no sense, but
It's private property, so we didn't have an option to stay.
All right. Any other reports? Mr. Paulson.
Mayor Paul, a question. Some weeks back, we had a uncontrolled sewage spill into the river that closed the river along a significant part of the city of Sandy Springs. We're now, I think we're like in our third or fourth week into this. Can anybody give me a report on the status of the river? Is it safe to go back in the river? What are people telling us about this? And I know it's not our responsibility, but whatever information
Well, it has
we
an
can share,
impact on us. There's no
it does
question.
have an impact on us for sure.
As of this week, it's still closed.
The problem was and I'm not a chemist. Dr. Kelly may be able to explain this better. But yeah, this is biochemistry, not necessarily organic or inorganic. I guess it's organic chemistry. But there are certain bacteria that break down the waste, and somehow or the other, something got into the system that killed the good bacteria that was breaking down the waste. The county, which operates the facility, was not aware, and they released treated waste into the river when it's supposed to be neutralized. It was not. And so it was not untreated water, raw sewage, but it was inadequately treated, but it still had roughly the same impact. The challenge was we got kind of an all clear from the county, and then the Park Service says, "Oh, not so fast." So I guess when the Park Service is working with the Chattahoochee River Keepers to do checks on E. coli in the river, and whenever it gets totally safe at the level they think that the standards are, they'll reopen it. That's what we know so far.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I guess I ask, as soon as we know that it's an all clear, let's pass that around. There's still people out there in the river. Well, obviously, not everybody reads the mail, but whatever we can do to communicate this, and also when it finally gets cleared up, let's let everybody know.
Right.
According to the National Park Service website, it is still closed from Powers Allen to the Chattahoochee Nature Center.
Which is a big chunk. Any others? All right. Any staff reports? Ms. Carlisle.
Before I give the report, I want to go back to Dr. Kelly's question about the account for when we sell property. We actually have an account called sale of assets. So, no, it's part of the general fund, and I'll show you that. Caroline, if you would just go down to the revenue section, page 5. Keep going. Right there. It's the last line above total other financing sources called sale of assets with $12,000 in the year-to-date actual. It's pretty low. We keep it pretty conservative because we don't know what we're going to sell and what we're going to sell it for. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the financials, you can go back to the top. So this is the review for May 2023 unaudited financials. We are at 91.67% of the fiscal year. Revenues are at 111.99%, and expenditures are at 85.98% of the budget. Revenues, having achieved the FY23 budget since presenting the April financials, are motor vehicle and motor vehicle TAVT fees, solid waste, local option sales tax, municipal court fees, and other miscellaneous fees. For the expenditures, we are continuing to monitor the departmental expenses, making sure that they are accurate and properly aligned with the budget before we close the year. And that concludes the results for May 2023.
All right. Any questions of the Finance Director? CFO. All right. Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. We need an executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Paulson.
I move that we suspend regular order and move into executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order, move to executive session for real estate and litigation. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on the executive session. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. We are in executive session.
Look at all the dust. Dust look down around like Jody and Tibby.
Oh, yeah. Well, they probably didn't dust it off when they brought it out. And same way down through there. You know, they put it in storage. And we haven't had a council meeting in a month.
It gathered dust. I'm so sorry I didn't catch that. I looked at the agenda and I didn't even catch that Sandy Springs in Atlanta. I mean, because I said it and I was like, oh.
I was just waiting for your opportunity.
Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on returning to regular order. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no. We are in regular order.
Mr. Mayor, I move adjournment. Second.
Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment, seconded by Mr. Paulson. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
Yeah, okay, I'm coming.